Finish what you start. Finish what you start. Every endeavor, every undertaking that we or any person takes involves a start and a finish. Finish what you start.
Welcome back to the neighborhood family. I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray, and I want to thank you for tuning in, listening in to Happy Hood, the podcast. This is where we connect, cultivate, and build a meaningful community that is centered around health, agape, power, institute. Happy Hood. It is a purpose-driven lifestyle. What's going on, family? I am so excited for you to join us again to come back to the neighborhood as we kick off another edition of Happy of the podcast. Finish what you start. This is where we talk to one more amazing people about their stories, their experiences, their how tos, all around the focus of finish what you started. Really getting an inside look of how they live a purpose lifestyle. And this individual that we have here today, I'm just going to say, this is truly going to be remarkable. If I had to put it in a phrase or a title, I guess I would say the power of healing, the power of forgiveness. I'll even throw in the power of letting go, in which that can be so powerful of itself. Our guest today, she is the author of Raised as a Lie, her memoir, which explores the story of growing up amidst deceit and denial through racism. She bravely takes the reader from family secrets to freedom. She is not only an author, she is a mom of three beautiful children, a chiropractor, a business owner, and the host of Elevate Now, where she champions women to pursue their passion with practical advice and resources. In 2008, our dear guest went back to school to become a doctor of chiropractic due to her inspiration from her eldest son that was having a health crisis. She founded Elevate Family Chiropractic, and for 5 years, she has served the greater North Atlantic community. Happy family, let's welcome to the neighborhood Dr. Naeema Olatunji. How you
Whoop,
doing? How
whoop.
you doing? I know, right? Woo, woo. How you doing?
I am so good and I'm so happy to be here having this conversation with you in this space. I
Yes.
love the concept behind your podcast. It is so incredible and it's a really good place to come and park
Oh,
your
great.
heart and your listening ear. So thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you. As we spoke, just preliminary as preparing for this, I'm so excited. Because as I said, happy family. I truly believe this is going to be an awesome conversation. I truly believe this is going to inspire someone. And again, thank you for having the bravery, to having the confidence to really share your story. So we're happy for you to be in the neighborhood, and I'm so like that was very warm for you to say that for individuals to park here because that is the atmosphere that I want to present a space where individuals can come to connect, cultivate, and build. So thank you so much, so
Yeah.
much. So I guess where do we start? Where do we start?
That's the question. I think
That's the
that's what my
question, right?
therapist asked me not 2 hours ago.
Where do we start? I
Uh,
guess happy family again. We're talking to Dr. Naeema, who wrote the book "Raised as a Lie." This is a book that really speak about biracial and people of color everywhere who have been burdened, who have been a burden with family secrets and really looking for opportunity to share their story as well as their freedom. So I guess we start with the question: what drove you to write it? What was either, and again, I have read the book, I have read portions of the book, family, and we'll show a picture here where you can get the book on pretty much all the book outlets, Amazon, and all those different places there. Um, but I guess to start with that question, what prompted you to write this book, and why now?
And an emotional crisis, a complete breakdown. If
Mhm.
I am completely transparent and
Yeah.
honest, and I talk about this in the intro to the book, this was not a story that I was trying to tell.
Mm,
This was not a story that I was going to write a book about. And I, in putting myself back together, um,
mm,
so we are in March, going in April. So not 15 months ago, I'm literally lying on the floor of my practice that I built. It
mhm,
is nearly a $500,000 practice that I serve the greater North Atlanta community with health and wellness. And I figured at 49, I was good. My business was successful. I had three amazing children. I survived a divorce. I survived a financial collapse. I survived going back to school with three children and a
mm.
husband. And I thought, if I can do all those things, then I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I had a complete and utter division of self,
Mhm.
completely shattered by a relationship that had ended and prematurely. And if you know, if I look back on it now, and certainly through my therapist's eyes, we could all see that that was doomed for
Mhm.
disaster. But that's not what I saw at the time.
Yeah.
I thought that everything was going amazing and well, and it was not. And when it all came to an absolute crashing
Mhm.
halt, it crushed me. And in me trying to desperately put the pieces back together, and rebuild myself, through that year of therapy, that's where the book came from. All of the journaling and the deep dives and the excavation of really deep childhood traumas that I
Mhm.
had been, as the therapist, I had been sweeping under the rug for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And a phrase that I got very intimately acquainted with in therapy is something that the military um, advocates for in times of crisis, and it is ignore and override. You have one job, you have one duty, you have one focus in front of you, and that is to survive the crisis. You do not have time to figure out what you might want to explore as a career later on, like what's your wife doing back home, how are your kids, right? Like none of that. We're not
Yeah.
figuring about any of that. You don't have time for an existential crisis. You're not considering about, what tattoo you're going to get next.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's truly about the number one focus in your life, and that's to survive the crisis. I didn't realize, Jay, that I have been living my entire adulthood in the ignore and override, from
Wow.
one crisis to another, and handling those. And in the meantime, I had like a mound of
Yeah. Yeah.
um shit that I had been sweeping under the rug.
Mhm.
And it all came out and it was exposed in that ending of the relationship. And I had to deal with it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. And I mean, when I when I hear you provide those thoughts and articulate them, and again, you such a wonderful writer, because as I was reading that in the first couple chapters, it was definitely captivating. I can feel it. I can definitely sense your understanding, your emotions at that time. And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is a couple things of, it's amazing how through our brokenness we are able to be liberated, or it's something about going through a moment where we have to empty out, you know, and it's almost like an emptiness or a flushing of things that has to be empty out in order for us to be refilled, you know,
Yeah,
for us really to take,
absolutely.
almost to flush out, right? When you think about our, and I hate to, use this, but our digestive system, it has to go through a flush, and I think at times as humans, we have to also do that as well as our emotions, and you talked about your childhood and the trauma that you experienced. And I mean, if we just look at the title of the book, Raised as a Lie, and even the picture, so first question, I guess let me back up. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
So I'm a little brown girl raised in an all white family, and I went to all white schools, and we lived in all white neighborhoods. And I was told that I too was white.
Mhm.
And the picture on the cover is as provocative as the title, and it is designed intentionally. I
Mhm.
wanted readers to look at the cover and feel my
Yes.
heart,
Yes.
because you can see that little brown girl is the only one that doesn't match. She's the
Mhm.
only one that doesn't fit in. And I was the only one that wasn't seen. And when you
Mhm.
grow up feeling invisible,
Mhm.
there are secrets that you
Yeah.
keep tucked away in your heart, and you internalize. If you're me, you
Mhm.
internalize them. That creates a feeling of unworthiness,
Mhm.
and eventually that's going to come out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I heard someone says that what doesn't come out verbally from the mouth will come out in actions, you know.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
many of us, especially in the African American community, um, we have, I just heard this concept, complex PTSD.
Hmm.
And it's pretty much when you think about the normal PTSD, like those that's in veterans, first responders and everything, that we can relate to those type of PTSD, post traumatic syndrome, right? And when we think about complex, it's these things that are built on. It's just things that built on, especially when we think about racism, the things that are continuing to build on as a young child, even as you grow up, you know.
Yeah.
And when I hear again to your point where being in that environment and going through those things and taking those things in, and really, as you have written in the book, as you wrote in the book, as you created this like tough skin, right?
Yeah,
This this
absolutely.
this this fortress of a thing that you hid from,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I guess when you think about that, and now being able to really articulate those things that was going on at that time, my question, are you able to look at it from a different perspective with your family doing the way that treating you, not necessarily treating you the way they did, but the way that they tried to hide you as relates to being Caucasian?
That is such a great question. What I have come to the conclusion of,
Uh-huh.
and have believed for a very long time. So, this is the thing that I knew
Mhm,
outside of my very tumultuous relationship with my older sister. What I
mhm,
know for certain is that my family loved me. I
yeah,
know for certain that I was loved. But
mhm,
being loved and feeling seen are two very
mhm,
different things. What
mhm,
I know, and my first realization, and embracing this, was when I became a mom,
mhm,
that you will do just about anything to protect your child.
mhm,
And I know that 1970 in this country,
yeah,
Texas, El Paso, Texas, at that, was not the time nor space to have the freedom to take agency over your own life and your destination.
mhm,
Meaning that what I know to be true is that my mother made the best decision that she knew at the time to protect her daughter.
mhm,
And and for that I will never blame her. While my mom, I maybe don't necessarily see eye to eye on her approach.
yeah,
What I do know is that she loved me and that she wanted to protect me. And she did the best that she could with what she knew and what she had in her own experiences at that time.
mhm, yeah. Now, in the book, you mentioned, I guess I'm gonna call it going through this Black liberation phase. As you went,
Jay, I became super black. Come
became
on now. I became super black.
super black. As you was
I
able
was
to.
an overachiever. I was the most black. I was president of the Dark Skin Club, just in case you were wondering. Super black, just
Super
super
black.
black,
Like
100%.
you had to make up for times. Like, tell us, like,
100, yes.
when you started to really dive deep into Black culture, right? And really embrace it, and really, you know, really digest it. What was certain things that you gravitated to?
My introduction was the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I cried, I
Mm,
mourned, I grieved all of the history that I knew nothing about. And all of this is coming full circle to me,
mhm.
um, meaning that it's coming all the way around and smacking me right in the face.
Wow.
I My first introduction to the word lynching meant nothing to me because I didn't know
Mm,
what it meant.
yeah.
And reading the autobiography, I felt all of this pent up anger and resentment.
Mm,
And my family's white.
mhm.
So I felt like I was caught in the crossfire.
Yeah.
And when I finally went to University of Southern California, I felt free to embrace
Yeah.
being and becoming super black. And I absolutely felt like I had 18 years to compensate for. And
Mhm.
so I spent a lot of time fully immersing myself in black culture, in
Yeah.
black history, in um I got dookie braids in my hair. I got a big ring in my nose. I
Uh-huh.
donned myself in African garb, and when I didn't have those on, I had t-shirt and Ice
Mhm.
Cube t-shirts and fuck the police. I had uh Socrates was a liar.
Mhm.
I everything. Christopher Columbus was a murderer and a rapist, like
Yeah.
all of it plastered all over my clothing and my attitude. And it was very common to hear
Yeah.
me say things like down with Whitey and Black Power. And
Mhm.
I I was all in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet I would have to go home. And when I would go home, it felt like a foreign land. And
Mhm.
it took me years to figure out how two diverging paths could then come back. Because what I did not identify myself as was a biracial woman. I
Mhm.
identified myself as a Black woman,
Yeah.
period.
Mhm.
And that, of course, caused a little bit of controversy in
Yeah.
my otherwise racist white family.
Mhm.
So that was a whole thing.
Yeah.
It was definitely supercharged in my house, and how I showed up did not bring ease and comfort to everybody. I I lit myself on fire so people would come and watch the bonfire,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
tried my hardest um to rationalize, excuse me, to sort of blow up this idea that my family was rationalizing, justifying
Mhm.
historical behaviors from white folks that I would not allow for us to continue to ignore.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I found the place for which that mm, we just aren't going to talk about some things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
that was where I was at.
Did you like as you was taking on and exploring um Black culture, did you receive any type of backlash from Black people?
Yeah. So I thought, here I come to USC,
Mhm.
and I thought these people are going to welcome me
Yeah.
with open
Soul
arms.
sister.
They're going
What's
to be
going on,
like,
soul sister?
"Soul sister, come on home."
Yeah.
That's not what happened. That is not what happened. What had happened was I I showed up and I was ready for the Black student community to love and
Mhm.
appreciate me. And colorism is real. And
Yes.
what I did not know at the time was this was the reality that has been suffered for generations post slavery,
Yeah.
and we aren't so removed, right? This is not 1,000 years ago. This
Yeah.
is not something in antiquity
Yeah.
that we are speaking of. This is one, maybe two generations removed. That's
Yes.
it.
Yes.
And this generational trauma
Mhm.
that was showing up in our lives in the 80s and 90s was not something that I was prepared for.
Yeah.
So I saw myself very differently than the rest of the Black student community,
Yeah.
mostly from most of the backlash that I felt came from other females. So when I would walk into a room, I would notice them grabbing their boyfriend's hands a little bit tighter. Cutting their eyes at me. I'd
Yeah.
hear, "She knows she ain't Black." And those comments
Yeah.
were devastating
Mhm.
because I wrongly assumed that they were just waiting for me to show up. And so that suit of armor that you spoke of earlier that I had, you know, adorned myself with as a young child,
Mhm.
I realized that I had to reinforce some of those walls around my heart because while growing up, I was too Black to be white,
Mm.
but now I'm too white to be Black.
Mhm.
And and that sort of created this sort of chasm in
Mhm.
this identity that I was trying to embrace. And ultimately, I just pushed through that. Again, it comes back to sort of the ignore and override,
Yeah.
because in this instance, I refused to be ignored. I refused to be
Mhm.
discounted. I would not let them dismiss me as invalid. Instead, I ran for president of the Black
Mhm.
Student Union,
Mhm.
and I didn't care. I take that back. I did care. I just wouldn't let them see it.
Yeah. 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 As you so question just came in mind. I can imagine as you go through this, or as you have went through this, regaining or having a renewal type of spiritual awakening. Like doing this, like did you ever, and again, and I'm a believer, but I think I'm not a religious person. Um and I believe if we truly being authentic, we do question God, you know, like what is going on? you know, like did you have moments like that? Like did you, like was your family, your white family, did they have a particular religious view? And as you got older, did you keep that, or was it more of the identity thing? I have to explore and kind of find my own.
Mhm. So I was raised Catholic, and then I was raised then it sort of phased into, pseudo Catholic,
Hmm.
where we would, go to mass on special holidays. And when I was really little, and some of the trauma that I endured, I internalized it. And while I never questioned that there was a God,
Yeah.
I did wonder why God hated me.
Mm.
And because of some of the very just horrific things that my sister used to say to me, I
Yeah.
believed her words. We grew up initially on a farm in Utah, very rural Utah. And when things were dirty on the farm, they were brown.
Yeah.
I knew that. Even as a little girl, I knew when things got dirty. And so I believed her when she said that I was dirty. And when bad things would happen, I would internalize it, and I would believe that God just didn't love me.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I got older, what I could no longer, through educating myself,
Yeah.
through the miseducation, I could no longer embrace religion as my salvation, because I knew
Hmm.
that the early Christian church had sanctioned slavery, and they
Hmm.
were sponsoring and financing slave ships through the transatlantic slave trade. And I couldn't justify in my mind why an organized religion would support such heinous cruelty
Yeah.
to other humans. And so I did essentially have to go on my own journey.
Yeah.
And I came to the conclusion in my early 20s that I would always embrace a higher being, and I would call that higher being God. But what I would not do is embrace the religious doctrine of any particular religion. Rather, I would essentially create my own spiritual practices based off of embracing an entire continent, right? I couldn't,
Mhm.
in the early 90s, there was no ancestry.com. So there
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
no tracing of my lineage back to some village. So instead, I just embraced an entire continent and took on different African spirituality and practices, and ultimately ended up raising my three children in the same philosophy. While you can be humble to a greater being and know that there
Mhm.
is a power larger than yourself, and then, to become a doctor of chiropractic, our founding philosophy is the power that created the body heals the body, right? And so
Mhm.
for me, this whole walk has been a spiritual journey and a
Yeah.
reawakening to one's self, that there is no separation between me and my maker. And
Mhm.
I love that is that I'm deeply grounded and founded in that. And it took me a long time to get to the space of finding peace in that.
Yeah. Peace is within, you know.
Yes.
It starts within.
Yeah.
That's I believe, I mean, that's beautiful because I believe we all go through a phase of where we have to unlearn a lot of things, you know. While my childhood was definitely uh, not yours or in, any shape or form, I grew up in a I'm a PK, preacher's kid, you know. So I grew up in a very religious focused home, but it wasn't until I got older that I really formed my relationship with God, you know. And a lot of things that was taught, I had to really unlearn them as I have gotten a bigger, a more wider perspective of God,
Mm,
that he wasn't just this thing that you do on Sunday, you know. So it's definitely, you have to go through those process, you know. And as I told someone, people call it, midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it, but I call it like taking inventory, you know, where you have to take a moment to understand or take a moment to recalibrate what you've been doing, you know, what has been going into you, right? And there's certain things that you need to let go of because it was their perspective, it was their opinion, you know, and you really have to understand, well, where do you stand, you know, and where you stand is where the peace is, right? That's
yeah.
where you really understand that peace, where you can have peace beyond this chaos that's occurring around you, you know.
Right, at
Mhm.
all times.
At all.
And we get to the place where we question our beliefs only when we are challenged,
Yeah.
only when we are put to the test, only when we are at the limits of our own experiences, that we cannot
Yeah.
expand, we cannot grow
Yeah.
without shedding some layers of
Ooh,
some ideas and some
yeah.
philosophies that
Yeah.
we embraced as our own once upon a time. And while they may have served us at the time, what we
Mhm.
realize in those moments is you have an opportunity in
Yeah.
this moment, this challenge, when you are down on your knees.
Mhm.
That's when you get to choose where where do I go from here?
Yeah.
What are the thoughts and the beliefs that are going to get me to the next stage? Because everything that brought you to the moment is only good enough to have brought you to that moment, but not where you need to go, not where the vision, where you're headed. And that
Mhm.
is, I think, the most beautiful thing about evolution. For
Yeah.
me, my belief is that we are in constant evolution. We are constantly evolving our
Mhm.
souls because we are here having these human experiences
Mhm.
to find that greater connection. And that's all within, but never until we are challenged, right? Like we don't grow during happy times. We just celebrate happy times.
Mhm.
It's those kicked in the teeth, down on the floor, sobbing your eyes out,
Yeah. Yeah.
questioning every doggone thing.
Mhm.
That's when true growth comes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, because that's when you're in the posture of growing, right? You're in
Yes,
you're in that
yes.
posture of breaking through the egg, right? So yeah, definitely so beautifully said. If going back to the title of the book, and again, I wanted to kind of build this up, family, as I asked this question. Again, you listen to Happy Hill the podcast. Finish what you start as we speak to our wonderful, wonderful guest, Dr. Naeema. Um, why the title of the book, Raised as a Lie? What brought you there?
So if my mother was living, even though that she was a white woman,
Hmm.
she would say, "You are extra." um, because I am. And one of the things that I imagined in
Hmm.
my three children is that they would look like me, but have the disposition of their father,
Yeah.
which they do not. So he is an extremely even keeled human being. He
Hmm.
is he's quiet
Yeah.
and he's grounded. And I am the result of an Italian mother and a Black biological father. It is in the DNA that
Yes.
I'm 100% evolving,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to say a nice word. But I'm an Aries, so I'm a fire sign, and that, like, I will light some shit on fire. Like
Yeah.
that is 100% me. So
Uh-huh.
thinking about the title, much like the picture on the cover of the book, it was
Mhm.
intended to be provocative. Um, because I want to grab the attention of
Yeah.
people who are just perusing, who are just browsing, who are just passing by, and I
Mhm.
want people to go, "Wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what did she say?" In the way of grabbing people's attention, it is
Mhm.
also in line with ultimately how I felt when the truth was revealed to me.
Mhm.
I felt
Mm.
like everything was a lie.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make peace with that for a long time.
Mhm.
And if I'm going to tell the story, and God knows,
Yeah.
Ernest knows, who was my therapist, that I spent many hours in his office throwing an absolute temper tantrum about what I was and was not going to write about, right?
Mhm.
Like, I'm not telling that story. I'm not gonna. And he was like, "Do you know what? You don't have to
Yeah.
tell that story," right? Like, and when it finally came down to it, the reason why I was having the angst
Mhm.
over telling some of those stories that I included in the book is because it required full transparency and full vulnerability. And here's the truth, I'm a work in progress. Vulnerability
Yeah.
is still a struggle for me.
Yeah.
While I recognize now that it is a strength, it doesn't mean that I have it mastered. I
Yeah.
spent 2 hours in therapy before we got to this interview talking about the same damn thing. And
Mhm.
so what I know is that we are constantly evolving and I'm a work in progress. And when it came to writing the book, what I
Yeah.
ultimately came to the conclusion of is if you're going to tell it, then you're going to tell it all.
Mhm.
And if you're going to name it, then you're going to name it the thing that you felt when you first heard the truth.
Yeah. 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 When you first heard the truth. Um, wow, that's a beautiful ending right there. When you first heard the truth. Um, I guess my question now, even to think about the cover, um, was that a picture that you kept? Like, did you keep memories like that? When I say keep memories like that, like pictures and like your birth certificate and family, I don't know if you can actually see the birth certificate with this picture, but on the cover it says, and you can see color. of of race is Caucasian.
Yep. So two answers.
Yeah.
One, because I'm a woman, I literally have crates of pictures,
Wow.
and both of my parents are deceased,
Hmm.
and so I have, all of my mother's pictures.
Yeah.
So yes, I have pictures, and while I could have chosen any number of dozens and dozens of pictures,
Yeah.
the truth remains the same. I'm a little brown girl that was raised in an all white family,
Hmm.
and no one ever looked like me. And so I could have chosen any image. That just happened to be the one that I did choose.
Yeah.
Now, my birth certificate, and I actually talk about this in the book, while on the cover, the coloring is different, but
Hmm.
my actual birth certificate is black and the typeset is white. And I
Hmm.
always found it ironic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was ironic after I found out, but
Yeah.
it was curious before because nobody else in my family has a birth certificate that looks like mine.
Wow.
Everybody else's is white with whatever their state seal is, and it's
Hmm.
got black typeset. And I just always thought, gosh, that's so interesting. And when
Yes.
we were coming up with concepts for the book cover, I really struggled. And let me tell you, we probably went through 18 different iterations,
Hmm.
me and the graphic artist team. And I was like, no, no, no. Because for me, the story, while I am a first time author, and there are plenty of first time author mistakes in my writing, it is not a Pulitzer Prize winning manuscript, but the story in and of itself is pretty damn outlandish. And
Hmm.
so, because the story itself is so dramatic, having anything less than drama on the cover, I think, does the story
Yeah.
an injustice,
Mhm.
right? And or doesn't give the story its due.
Mhm.
And I just I didn't want to have that. And like you said, you sort of alluded to it earlier when you said that in your childhood that you experienced some things as
Mhm.
a preacher's kid, and we all have stories. And while this particular story of mine happens to be a bit more dramatic than most,
Mhm.
I grew up believing that my life was normal because it
Yeah.
was my normal. We
Mhm.
all have our own stories. We
Yeah.
all have our own traumas. Nobody gets to escape childhood unscathed.
Mhm.
There are stories behind every human walking around.
Yeah.
And what I was hoping to do with my book was, while I started writing that book to heal myself and
Mhm.
the hurts and the cracks in my own foundation,
Yeah.
I finished writing that book and completed that journey for all the other women
Yeah.
specifically who are still walking around feeling unworthy, so
Mhm.
that my story could then be an example that while you might be feeling that you aren't valued, that
Mhm.
worthiness is an inside job, and let my life be an example that you, my friend, are worth every damn thing.
Yeah. Worthiness is an inside job. It kind of you kind of answer my next question, like what do you want readers to leave with? So I guess I would change it up when you talk about women um and leaving, reading this book and understanding that they're worthy. What would you say to um non-black women or men that reads the book?
Mm,
Like, what do you want them to
yeah,
leave with?
that is such a great question. So, while I am telling my story,
Yeah.
and this is my version of
Mm,
the story, right? Because
mhm.
there are many people in my family and friends growing up, they would all have a different version of
Yeah.
my story, right? Or of the story, and certainly their perspective on my story. So,
Mhm.
what I cannot claim is that I told the entire story.
Yeah.
I just told my version. And
Mhm.
my version of my story,
Wow.
I told so that other people hearing my story would then reconnect to their own stories.
Yeah.
While this is a story of a little brown girl,
Mhm.
that it is not only for folks of mixed race. It is not only for the little brown girls in the world. It
Mhm.
is for anyone who has ever struggled with their own worthiness. It is
Mhm.
for anyone who has ever not felt seen. It's for anyone who has ever felt that in a situation that their voices were not heard.
Mhm.
In that, I think that the book has this ability to transcend race.
Yeah.
And although I wrote it for other women like me, I
Mm,
also believe that it transcends gender, because what I know to be 100% true is that we all have stories.
mm.
We all have hurts. We all have unresolved things in our past. And we are all part of the human race. And
Mm.
we all, it is my belief that we are all desirous of evolving to better versions of ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think that where we as people connect is through our stories.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I hope that
Yeah.
somebody who picks up my book reads my stories and they connect to their stories. Because ultimately, what I want people to do is to go out into the world and be the best version of yourself. Live
Mm.
for your highest potential.
Mhm.
Reach for the things that are just outside of your grasp.
Yeah.
Go for those. Reach for your dreams. Push yourself to become the best possible potential of you. And
Mm.
in that, what I know is that we are all responsible for our own well being. It is
Mhm.
not anybody else's job to heal you. It is not anybody else's
Mm. Say that
responsibility
again.
that
Yeah.
you should show up in some kind of better version of yourself. That's your job. It
Mm.
is my job. All of us together have our own job, and that is to bring forth our gifts and our blessings. And we cannot do that from a place of brokenness.
Mm. Mm.
So take your own steering wheel of your own bus and drive that into you becoming and then becoming and becoming,
Yeah.
because we're all a work in progress.
Yeah. 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 I'm gonna clap for that. I'm gonna clap. I'm gonna clap for that. Such it was so beautifully said. Are you still close with your family? Your white family?
Um, I uh, I was able to write the book because both of my parents are deceased, and I had the freedom, I'm putting that in quotes, to
Mhm.
be able to tell my story without feeling the need to protect my parents. And that's, oddly enough, is a blessing. I
Mhm.
could not have told this story 10 years ago.
Mhm.
So it's a great opportunity to be able to share that now. I have an amazing relationship with my younger brother, who shows up in the book as Baby William,
Mhm.
and I love him to pieces. We did the book launch earlier this month in March,
Wow.
and he was there and supportive and cheering me on. And he was one of maybe three white men in the entire room.
Mm.
And he stood tall and proud and never wavered in his support for me. And that means the world to me.
Yeah.
And I appreciate
Yeah.
him more than I can ever um, give words to.
Yeah.
And so yes, there are some of my family members that I'm still very close with,
Hmm.
and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
And others not so much.
Hmm. 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 Yeah.
And we still thank them, right?
Yeah.
You can still be grateful for the people who showed up in your life to teach you lessons,
Hmm.
because they don't all come easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can still be grateful. You can bless them and love them from afar,
Hmm.
like a long way away
Hmm.
far.
Hmm. I like how you mentioned, because I was going to ask you this question. I'm trying to rephrase it because a lot you have really answered a lot of questions, and
Translation, Jay, I talk a lot.
no, no, no. No, happy family. See, you doing good. Like I'm like taking it all in, and I forget, oh, you have to engage too. Um, when you think about like advice you'll give someone that is struggling with self-worthiness and identity. One thing you said that really stood out to me is, and I'm gonna phrase it in this way, taking responsibility in your healing. I think that's like is like that is so important, because I can't, when I say I, your community, your family, or whoever, loved ones that love you can't want it more than you. You know, they can't want it more than you. And until you, and I know it is so painful and it's scary and it can be traumatizing for you to take control of that will and really drive yourself in on this healing journey, you know. So I'm gonna say, hey, one that you provide is take responsibility of your healing. What's maybe two other things that you would provide to someone, advice to give them as they struggle with their self-worthiness or their identity or just healing?
I love that. One of the things that I would add to what you just said, it made me think of being a mom. And one of the things that we would never one time tell a baby who was going into toddlerhood, who's trying to walk,
Yeah.
oh, just give up, sweetie. Don't worry about it. It's too hard. It's too, I know. I know. Just don't worry about it. Mommy will do it for you. No, you won't, because
Yeah.
you can't. You cannot walk somebody else's journey for them. And so
Mhm.
if we turn that around and we look in the mirror, our own reflection comes back at us for a reason. It is our job to do the work. Nobody else can do your work. Nobody else can walk your walk or your path. Just like we wouldn't tell the baby, just sit down, relax, don't worry about it. Somebody will come around and pick you up,
Mhm.
because that only works for so long.
Yeah.
And when you look at the world and your experiences as all mirrors that are being held up for you as opportunities. So I'm a big believer in, Carol Dweck wrote a book called The Growth Mindset. And I'm a huge believer of the growth mindset. So you either have a
Yeah.
growth mindset where you believe that you are here evolving essentially and can learn and
Mhm.
grow with enough applied knowledge, or you have a fixed mindset, which is the belief that whatever you were born with, whatever the skills that you evolved into, that's it, that's a wrap, you done, right?
Mhm.
Stick a fork in it, you done. And that's never going to change. It just is the way that it is. So I'm a huge believer in a growth mindset. I embrace that wholeheartedly. And because I'm a believer in growing, what I also believe is Reverend Michael Beckwith says, pain pushes you until your vision pulls you.
Mm,
Pain pushes you until your vision pulls you. And
mm,
that has been my mantra for 3 decades. It is
wow.
what I know to be true, that you
Mhm.
can use pain as a motivator, but for so long.
Yeah.
Then at some point, your vision of yourself, of your life, of your children, of the vision of your future, whatever it is, insert wherever,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
until that vision can take a form and you can see it, then your pain is going to keep pushing you. It's going to keep knocking you around. You're going to be in the boxing ring with Muhammad Ali. And how long are you going to last?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I believe that the world has nothing for us, that we are here to give of our blessings and to give of our gifts. It is our responsibility to share that with the world. Do
Mm-hmm.
not come to the world with an open hand. You come to the world with a basket full of your gifts that you are here to bless the people with. And finally, I would say that your mindset
Mm-hmm.
has to be that the universe, God, whatever it is that you call and define it, is conspiring on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And that all of these opportunities that come in the forms of lessons and relationships gone bad and tragedies and triumphs, all of those are here conspiring on your behalf to make the best version of you.
Mm. Thank you so much. Where can as we talk about far as you can purchase the book, Raised as a Lie, where can individual purchase this book at?
That's awesome. Raisedasalie.com. You can go to the website and find out all the new happenings and what's going on in my world. You can
Mhm.
also go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target, any of those shopping places online, and you can you got to type in the whole title
Yeah.
because I'm not famous yet. It ain't on the New York Times best-selling list yet.
It's coming. It's coming.
It's coming. Amen. And of course, you can find out all of the wonderfully fun things that we are doing on Instagram. So I'm Dr. Naeema Writes on Instagram.
Dr. Naeema writes, raisedasalie.com. What's next? What can we expect from you in the future? Um, anything that you have coming up?
I love. So I one of the things that I have made peace with in my life is
Mm,
that I'm the type of person that chooses hard things,
mm,
that wants to challenge myself.
yeah.
And I am constantly looking for a greater evolution of Naima.
Mm,
So,
mm.
physically, that looks like a triathlon that's happening
All right.
um, right after my 51st birthday next month. So I'm really, really excited. I'm training for
Finish
that.
what you start. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have no idea why I said this. I would do this, but here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. Um, but I'm excited because we just did the book launch just a couple weeks ago, and we are about to embark on the book tour, which is really, really exciting to be able to do that. And
Mhm.
in my practice where I get to serve my community,
Yeah.
we are growing and expanding and hiring a new doc. And I'm really excited for that because that also lends me opportunities to be able to go out in the world and speak.
Yeah.
Because I think that when we share the message, oftentimes when I heard the messages of the growth mindset and,
Mm,
evolutions and all the things, they were from people who didn't look like me.
mm,
And I'm really excited to be able to go out into the world and have conversations with folks that do look like me, who are
yeah.
still on the path, and
Yeah.
they're on the journey. And so I'm excited about getting out in this wonderful place called Earth and
Yes, yes,
just
indeed.
spreading the message.
Yeah. If you're ever in Charlotte or if I ever come down to Atlanta, I'll have to look you up. And if
I
you ever
would love that.
definitely do that. Last question, and I believe, I mean, you have provided so many nuggets, so many gems. I mean, happy family. I told you this is going to be a remarkable conversation. I guess I'm gonna say it in this way, or ask you in this way here. One word question or one word answer, excuse me, or I maybe give you 2 or 3 words, right?
Aw,
Uh,
thanks. For someone who talks way a lot.
How
Yes.
would you define um, what does it mean to you to finish what you start? In one word or 2 or 3, what does it mean to you to finish what you start?
Mm, honorable.
Mm,
Honorable.
yeah, honorable.
My mom used to call me Monday, Wednesday. I'd have these great ideas on Monday, like I was going to save the world. And on Wednesday,
Yeah.
she'd ask me about it. And I was like, oh, Mom, that was so Monday ago. I love the way that I feel when I finish something, because
Mm,
nobody can give you that. You can't buy it.
mm,
You can't, you can't purchase it, watch a YouTube video, none
yeah.
of that. You can only earn it, and you earn that honor.
Come on now. Come on. Happy family. Thank you so much for joining us in the neighborhood, Dr. Naeema. Hey, happy family. Do me a favor. Be strong and know that you were created for greatness. And no matter what life may bring you, always love God, love self, love your neighbor. I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray. And again, I want to thank you, my guest, Dr. Naeema. Thank you so much for being here. Please go get that book, Raised as a Lie. Go to her website, and we're going to have all the information on our YouTube channel. So continue to like, continue to subscribe. And you know what? Be blessed.